to open it up correctly. Not by saying go pack go, even though I wish that was the correct opening. We're going to have Pastor Johnny open it up with prayer.
Father in heaven, God, we thank you. God, we thank you for those who are informed and those who are empowered, God. We thank you, God, for the information that they have received and the information that they pass on. We thank you for their time of study and research, God, and we ask that you would allow them to share that with us in such a way that we are also too informed and empowered and encouraged and inspired to go out and be a change agent in this world. God, let us make a difference by the way we live our lives and also by the way we are prayerful in selecting carefully who we give our vote and confidence in. God, we thank you for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. And
Okay. Thank you, Pastor Johnny. And to continue on, we have Miss Angela Martin Greer to tell us about PAAG. She is the director of that program, so she is best suited to give us a few more details. So can everybody give her a rousing round of applause?
Thanks, TS. As he said, I am the director of PAAG, which stands for the Political Awareness and Advocacy Group, and we are turning the page for change. So what I want to talk to you about is basically what our mission is. We're geared towards helping people have a voice in the situations that affect their lives, to be able to have a seat at the table, to make sure that their interests are being met. We've done different educational sessions, get out the vote efforts, and we'll continue to do those types of things to make sure that the candidates that we put in office actually do the things that they promise us that they're going to do. So we will, it doesn't end with the election. We will make sure that after the election that we reach out to those candidates and let them know, hey, you promised you're going to do X, Y, and Z. We want to see that. You know, we want to know that you're going to actually support us. I have a great team that works with me, and we're going to be the ones giving this presentation today. So again, thanks for coming out, and I'll give it back to TS.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So now that we have a better idea of what PAAG is and what they stand for, let's move forward to Mr. James Taylor on what to expect and the ballot. Good. Give it up for James. Yeah. Whoop, whoop.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, what to expect when you go to the polls? You can expect to see and use the Verity Duo machines, voting machines. Voters who have not voted since 2000 for the presidential election, you will see new machines this year. There is no straight ticket voting. Voters must select each candidate individually, regardless of the party affiliation. You know, back in the day, it used to be you can just press a button, it'll vote for everybody, but now you have to select each and every one. The ballot could be up to 2 pages in length when printed, which we've heard evangelized a lot lately, so be prepared. Expect long lines, which we're all expecting because we want everybody to vote, right? So I know y'all preparing that you want your brothers and sisters and your friends, your neighbors, your mom and them to be in line with you. Voters will not be able to skip races without pressing a button to advance the ballot on the Duo screen. So just make sure if you get in there and you're stuck, you have to press a button in order for it to advance. The ballot. A voter's ballot reflects the address used when they registered to vote. Each address falls within a voting precinct. Voters will not vote in every race. Voters will see races that fall within their specified precinct, and no matter where they vote. So if you live over here in precinct 2 or precinct 3, stuff that's for precinct 4 or other precincts, you will not be able to see those or to vote for those. Let's see, statewide, countywide, and citywide races will be on the ballots of voters who live in those specific districts. And then the sample ballot, it will be available in late September after successful completion of the logic and accuracy testing. So that's what we're going to get an opportunity to see today, a sample ballot. Yay, nay? Yes. And I would encourage you all, what I've been doing with my family, nieces and nephews, my sister and I have been having family voting time where we've created some Zoom recordings just to make sure that my nieces and nephews who are of age take the time to go vote. And we just kind of been educating them. And this is what this sessions are about too, to educate us, get us prepared. You can actually take a copy of the ballot with you when you go in to vote, so you don't have to memorize it. That was such a blessing for me a few years back to be able to actually take it in there versus saying, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, which one do I remember the most? But not anymore. So please take advantage of this opportunity so you can be a very intelligent and informed voter. Now we have, going back to Miss Pat to tell us, oh, I said your part, Miss Pat, didn't I? Where's she at? I guess it's some more of what's on the ballot. Thank you. All right, y'all gave me a hand. Y'all have to give Miss Pat a hand too.
Oh, so much love, so much love. Before I get started, Brother Willie, would you advance the slides to what's on the ballot? That slide? Thank you. I'm doing that so you guys can see what I'm saying, because I put it on my phone so I don't have to look behind me. Let me put this over here. I don't have enough hands. Keep going. It should say what's on the ballot. Is it on the right one now, James? Okay. We all know that we're going to have the federal elections on it. We've been hearing so much about the presidential election and some of the Senate races and stuff, but there's far more on the ballot that you should be aware of. And guess what? Technology has injured me again. So I guess I will have to look at this. Okay, we know that these races are on the ballot. Presidents, we have Texas Senator, because we've been hearing Colin Allred and Ted Cruz advertisements every time you turn around. I'll be so delighted when November 5th happens so I can watch something without them. And then we have the Texas State candidates, and we have local school district. I'll be okay in a minute. Let me get organized here. We have local school district candidates, and it has them for all of the Harris County ISDs. Not just Harris County ISDs. We have all of the ISDs in the state of Texas that are pertinent to us, that will probably be on your ballot, and that includes not just HISD, but also Cy-Fair and all the rest of them. In this booklet, in this guide, the League of Women Voters has compiled responses that they've received from candidates. I don't know about you, but it's very frustrating when you go into the ballot box and you see a bunch of names that you haven't seen on commercials, or you've seen their signs on the side of the road, but you didn't know who they were. And by the time you got home to look them up, you forgot what their name was. They've asked them specific questions on where they stand on certain issues, where they stand on environment, where they stand on the Border Patrol situation, where they stand on general immigration rights, where they stand on climate change. All of these kind of things that they've asked specific ones of them depending on what they're running for. Next slide. So I recommend you take one of these so you can read at your leisure, take your time, see where they stand, and if they stand for what you stand for, so you can make those decisions, okay? I'm a little ahead of the slide, but I didn't want to forget that, and I have this fear of dropping this on the floor. So I wanted to tell you that before I did that. Okay, for those of you who may have a special dual vote, What that is on a certain precinct, you're going to have two things you have to vote for, and I think it's 118. But anyway, it has a candidate to finish out a term that the person who had the term is no longer in that seat, and that ends in December 31st. But then you have who's going to be in that seat after that. So you're going to have a duo in voting for that same seat. You need to pay attention to that so you won't be confused and think, well, I just voted for that. And so you might vote for one and not the other. You need to vote twice in that particular situation. So pay special attention to that, okay? The other thing that's on the ballot, James, did you help me out here? It didn't do it. Why isn't it sliding? Oh, you gave me yours. Okay, that's okay. Don't worry about it. There we go. Yeah. Keep going. I already did that one. Okay, right here. All right. The next thing that I know a lot of us really don't get faced with until we walk into the ballot, and that's all of these judges. And we don't know what judge to vote for. And so we either skip it or we have some arbitrary decision-making process so we can hurry up and get done. Once again, read this. Most of the judges that are running responded to questions they were asked about where they, how they made their decisions on how they sentenced people or what their standing was. And these are people that have an effect in our daily lives. In addition to them, we have the district attorney, the municipal utility district, and all of you are concerned about one of these utility districts. Your water, your electricity, all of that. Who's running all of that? Who's going to make the decisions that affect you and how you live? And then the fresh water supply district and the emergency service district and the Harris County flood control district. You want people in there who will make sound decisions, that'll make decisions that might possibly keep your home from being flooded out. And so please, please, please read this. And if the candidate doesn't have information on here and they suggest you go to their website and see what they stand for. So you can make informed, educated decisions on what it is that they're doing. And Harris County is going to have the longest ballot. So I suggest you do what James said, and that's print out your sample ballot. You need only to get online. We'll have the in here also has the website for finding out where your sample ballot is, but we also have it on one of the flyers that you're going to be given before you leave. So you can print out your sample ballot. You can sit down and make the decisions. Yes, it's going to take some time, but the time it takes you to do this is nothing compared to the anxiety and problems you might have down the road if you don't do it, because you either didn't vote for something or you voted for the wrong person. So please take the time. It's like going to the doctor. If you go and you don't tell them what's wrong with you, then you leave just like you came. And if you don't go because of the cost, think about the cost it will take you if you have to go to the hospital. That's even more than a doctor visit and more time. So take the time. Please take the time to print out your sample ballot, sit down with this, read about it, fill out the sample ballot, and when you go in to vote, you've already done the work. You just check off the boxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pat. Now for that sample ballot, really good idea. I didn't know that was a thing. I think I'd rather call it a cheat sheet. It makes it more exciting. But yeah, so everybody go ahead, go home, do your research, make your cheat sheet, bring it in and pass your test like that. But how do we vote? How are there different ways that we can vote? Those questions will be answered by Miss Angela Martin Greer and Mr. Chase Alexander. Let's give it up. Yeah, keep the energy high for this exciting event.
Yeah, we got to keep it high energy. So, yeah, I'm up here to give you a little bit more information on how you can vote and also some important dates to keep in mind. Now, to start, we had some information on when you could register to vote. Unfortunately, voter registration has passed. So that was October 7th. So if you're not registered, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until the next election. But it's not bad to get signed up early next year. We also have the ability to mail in vote. That's something that'll be discussed a little bit later, but the last time to do that, you still have time to get your ballot. If you want a mail-in ballot, you can get that by October 25th. That's the last day you can sign up for it. And early voting is actually literally right around the corner because it starts tomorrow. So if anybody wants to get started, yeah, let's get our early voting in, because when you do your early voting, you actually have a lot more options to be able to do it throughout your day. So that's something that I'll be discussing very shortly. So, and then, of course, obviously, the last day of early voting is November 1st, and election day is November 5th. It's recommended that if you're going to vote in person, that you make sure you get a voter plan beforehand. You never want to be last minute. You never want to have to come up with that information on the day. So, some stuff to keep in mind is when you come up with your voting plan, are you voting in person? Where's the location? What time is that location open? And if you're voting early or you're voting on the day of. Because if you're voting early, there are about 80 early voting centers. Now, if you're voting in your county, you can vote at any of them throughout the day. Now, when you do that, you just go, you show up. It's the same process as you never really would do. So make sure that when you go there, you print your sample ballot because, as they said, it's very important to know what's going to be on the ballot. Unfortunately, we are not able to use cell phones. If you use your phone while you are in a voting center, you will be given a warning. And then after that warning, you will be escorted out and you will not be able to vote. It is a new thing. We have a lot of poll watchers, so don't even test it. Don't even try it. Just go in with your sample ballot printed. If it's printed, you're good to go. Now, you also want to make sure, no matter how you vote, that you bring in multiple forms of ID. Now, like they said earlier, your voter registration really determines whether or not you're going to be able to vote, and what's on your registration is going to determine whether or not you're able to vote. So one of the things that's vitally important is that your address matches your voter's registration. Because if it doesn't, you're going to have to fill out a provisional ballot. Now, does anybody know what a provisional ballot is? Has anyone heard that before? No? Okay. Okay, no worries. So what a provisional ballot is a actual hand paper ballot that they give you that you have to fill out the information because your information on your voter registration does not match the information you're given on the day. So say you moved, you were in transit of moving, and you did not actually fill out your voter registration with that new address. Or you moved in the interim before you actually were able to vote, but after you did your voter registration. Because that doesn't match, they are legally required to stop you from voting with that information and give you a provisional ballot. Now, provisional ballots are supposed to be just as good, but the hard part is it is a hand ballot. It is something you have to do on the day, and it's just another headache, and it makes the whole process take an extra long time. I can speak personally from experience. We moved a couple years ago, changed the information. For some reason, it didn't actually change, and we had to fill out the provisional ballot. It made a voting that usually takes about 10 minutes, take about an hour. So if you can avoid that, do so. So another thing to keep in mind, when you actually go for election day, there are 700 available locations to vote, as opposed to the 80. This is because in Texas, if you want to have an early voting location, it has to be open for the duration of early voting. So you have a lot of schools, churches, and places like that that would not be available on certain days for certain hours that cannot do early voting, but they will be available on election day. So when you come up with your voting plan, ensure that you have the right location. Generally speaking, if you're going to a location in early voting, it's also available on election day, but the inverse is very rarely true. So just make sure you know that and you have that ready to go. So for voting centers on election day, it's open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But early voting is 7 a to 7 p.m. on October 21st to October 26th. But on October 27th, it's from noon to 7. On the 28th and the 30th, it's from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. On the 31st, it's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then on November 1st, it's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So if those times don't work for you, you have a lot of different dates. But on election day, just hammer home, it's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You must be in line before the close of the poll. If you're in line, they are supposed to allow you to vote. That usually holds true. But if you can at all make it possible to be there early or do a different day, it's highly recommended. So to talk a little bit about the voter IDs that are accepted, it's a Texas driver's license, a Texas ID card, a handgun carry license, a citizenship certificate with a photo, or military ID. Any of those are acceptable forms of identification, and it's always good to, if you have them, to have multiple just in case you run into any issue. So some of the frequently asked questions are, if you don't have one of those 7 forms of ID, what can you do? So if you don't have one of the approved IDs, you can fill out a reasonable impediment declaration at the voting center and get another form of ID, such as a bill, a bank statement, or a government check, or your voter registration certificate. Now, once again, you would have to actually go to one of the people who's working there. They would have to give you a form that you would have to fill out. So it's something you can do, but it is going to increase the time it takes for you to vote. If your photo ID has expired, if you have expired ID, you can still take it in if it's not more than 4 years expired. So say you just have been to the DMV, takes too much time, you don't want to get it done right now, you can still use it as long as it's within 4 years. If your voter registration is in suspense, so say you did do the thing, you tried to fill it out, it did not work the way it was supposed to, there's been a miscommunication, whatever, with your voter registration, you can still vote. You will have to fill out a form. You're still able to vote it though, and it will take time until they actually get it passed to make sure that that information aligns for it to actually be counted. And if you wanted to get a mail-in ballot and then you decide later on that you actually want to just vote in person, you can do that. But when you do it, you have to show up in person at the voting center and you have to vote as a regular ballot. And right now, one of the things that's encouraged is if you do have that mail-in ballot, to take that with you, just as an insurance that you don't send it both ways, because that is a form. If you do vote mail-in and you vote in person, that is a form of voter fraud, so please don't do that. So from that's it for me, and I will bring up Miss Angela Martin-Greer to do the second half of the Ways to Vote. Thank you guys for your time, and let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Chase. Okay, so we have some frequently asked questions, which I believe he's gone through. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so we're going to talk about ballot by mail. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get your ballot. And so if you're doing the ballot by mail, you need to request it by, as Chase mentioned, October 25th. And then that gives them time enough to get it to you and for you to turn around and mail it in. The hitch with about voting by mail is they're wanting to make sure that you are who you say you are. So some of the things that they've added since the last election to try to improve what, as they said, voter integrity, is making sure that whatever identification you used when you initially registered to vote is the same identification they want you to use when you request a ballot by mail. How many of us remember what ID we used? Do you remember? Okay, very few people. So the best approach to that is it'll say, do you put in your driver's license or your social security number, I suggest that you put in both. So that way, no matter how you register to vote, you've covered it. The other things that we want to make sure of when you're voting by mail is knowing that there are requirements as to how you qualify. Again, Texas has changed the laws in that regard to make sure, again, that only certain people are eligible to vote by mail. So the requirements that you have to be at least 65 years old or older, that you're in the county, that you're not voting early for that, and that you're sick or disabled. You can see some of the other things that are listed here, that you're confined to jail, but otherwise able to vote. So who understands what that means? So what that means is if you're off paper, so you're in jail, but you're maybe there because you couldn't raise enough money to bond yourself out while you wait to go to court and have your court case held, but otherwise you would be eligible to vote. So even though you're in jail, you're not considered a felon and ineligible to vote. Also people who are off paper. And what that means is you are eligible to vote now because you served your time. You're not required or have any requirements with the state that you haven't fulfilled. So now you're eligible to vote. A lot of people don't realize that once you're off paper that you can actually vote. And that's why these things are so important. So next slide, please. So one of the other things we want to do is make sure that you're not delaying your mail-in ballot application. So as I mentioned before, you want to have the proper identification. So your identification number, meaning your driver's license or last four of your social security, is what they're looking for. And again, they're looking to make sure it matches what you used when you registered. So next slide. So other ways that you can make sure that you avoid any types of delays is making sure your information is put in properly, that your identification that you're using is current. And as Chase mentioned, even if your driver's license has expired, as long as it's not past that 4-year time frame, then you are good to go. And you can always check and make sure that your mail-in ballot is received. They usually have a number that's on the bottom so that you can track that. Next slide, please. Some other ways to make sure that you're not having any delays with your mail-in ballot. You want to request as many elections that you know you're going to be mailing in a ballot for at the forefront. So if you know that you're not going to be able to attend in person for the primaries or the general election, when you request that application, then you can mark that off on the application at that point. So you don't have to do this each and every time. You can request it for the entire election cycle. So some of the things, it's like if there's a runoff, like this last primaries we had a runoff for certain races, then you can go ahead and put that you want a mail-in ballot for that runoff. And if there's any kind of special elections that are going to be coming up, I would suggest that if you know that you're going to be doing vote by mail, that just go ahead and check all of those. So that way you don't even have to worry about, am I going to make the deadline or not? I've already got those things covered. Next slide. Okay, so the other thing is you want to make sure that you read the instructions thoroughly and understand what it is that they're asking you to do and that you fill it out properly. Because again, if you don't, then they're going to have to contact you and then you're going to have to make the corrections and then you're going to have to send it back in. And what you don't want to have happen is that your vote doesn't count because of some of those issues. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so when you're voting by mail, the last thing that's essential, if you have any questions or run into any issues, there's a number that you can call. There are people that can help you with the county and make sure that your information is correct. The number that they have here is, this is with Harris County, 713-755-6965. And what I can do is send y'all a copy of this presentation so that way you have this information to refer back to, because I know it's a lot of information, a lot to try to remember, and you may not have the question right now, but something may come up, or a family member may have a question, and that way you're able to address that. Next slide. So at this point, we're gonna actually take a break. I'm gonna give it to TS here, and he's gonna give you some instructions on what we need to do.
Okay. All right, welcome to halftime, everybody. It's time to take a break, get a breather. There's snacks and stuff over there. Miss Angela is so kind to say that she will call up the tables to let you know, so there will not be a cluster of people running and jumping for chips and water and stuff. But welcome to halftime, everybody. We'll resume in 10 minutes.
Okay, people, we have snacks, but we also have pizza, so we're gonna put the pizzas on the table in just a moment.
I don't know what was wrong with it.
All right. Sorry for the delay, folks. I'm going to announce the tables, and you guys can go get some pizza, some snacks, and we have some wonderful people back there to help serve you the pizza. So I'm going to start with this table right here, blue table, and the front blue.
Bishop, all right. We see you. All right. To continue on, we have Minister Pam Davis Duck to tell us more about how to prepare and how you can help with this voting process. And she'll go into a little bit more detail than the convenient newspaper article thing that Miss Pat showed. So without further ado, let's give her a round of applause.
Good afternoon. I am going to start with assistance with voting. So a voter who needs language assistance should notify an election worker and someone will be assigned to assist them. The voter in need is also able to choose someone to assist them. The voter can choose to have anyone other than the voter's employer or an agent of the voter's employer or an officer or agent of the labor union to which the voter belongs. The person assisting must complete an oath. That's very important. I believe we have one. I believe we have some people I know in my family that has that. And it says voters with disability. Some of the accessibility features our office provides to help, and this is Harris County, feel empowered and independent, including curbside voting. I know you heard of that before, because I believe there was, his name was Chris Hollins. He kind of implemented that when he was the voter registrar, or involved in that. Voting order priority for voters limited mobility. Someone in line with a visible disability can be moved ahead in line. Assistant touch device with braille and audio ballot. Virtual interpretation on demand. Wait times may vary. How can you help? Harris County's clerk's office does not choose the people who work in the voter centers. Each political party, this is important, chooses their election judges. The election judges hire the clerks. Their office places staff in last minute and or emergency situations. Election workers recruit. It says recruitment. Election judges are nominated by the parties. Election clerks must apply and be selected by an election judge. Do we have anyone that is election judge in this audience? Nope. Okay. Now, we have to plan our vote. Some of that you heard earlier, but I'm going to go over it just briefly. You have to create your plan. You print your sample ballot out, and you can go to harrisvotes.com. You have to do your research before that previously, and you need to also make selections on the sample ballot. Decide the date, and this is important, the time you will vote. You log into harrisvotes.com to choose the vote center you will need. Set the calendar reminder and go vote. Of course, you need to take your what? ID, right? And take your sample ballot. Can you take a cell phone in there to vote? No, that's a no-no. And you can take a friend or a family member. Remember, you can go to any vote center in Harris County because we have countywide voting. And that's it for me for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Pam. Minister Pam. All right. Do you guys have any burning questions that you have been sitting on this whole time that you would like answered? Something specific to what you've seen? Maybe we haven't covered something. All right. Yeah, I'll come over to you. You might have a really, really good question. I know you're a minister, so you probably talk louder than the mic, but I'll come to you anyhow.
Where do we get the newspaper that has all the information that she was talking about, that the candidates were asked questions? Where do we get a copy of that at? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I'm just the host. I don't know the answers. Okay. She said that there are a stack of those in the front before we leave out. So you'll be able to get one of those guys there. Good question. All right. Oh, by the way, if you guys want any more pizza, snacks, and so on and so forth, please help yourself.
My question is, if you don't, can you just write on a piece of paper who you wanted to vote for versus bringing the ballot in? The different people, because so many people to remember if you don't have a ballot.
That's a good question. Yeah, so can you make your own cheat sheet or do you have to print out a ballot and do it that way? Is the question.
We're making TS1 today. There should be another microphone. Yes, you can bring your own cheat sheet. If you go to the websites where they have your sample ballot, you can print that out and fill it out online and print it out. But if you don't do it that way, you can always bring paper. You just can't bring a phone in. That's the big stipulation. You can't bring in your phone.
Sister Ruth, you got a question? No worries.
So my grandson is in college in Kansas, and he is registered to vote, but I don't think he's yet asked for a ballot. So does he call that 713-755 number to get a mail-in ballot, or how does he go about doing that?
So he's in Kansas and is he in college there? Okay, so he has two options. He can either register to vote in Kansas and vote there, or he can request the absentee ballot. So he can go to harrisvotes.com and go under request a ballot, and he can be able to request a ballot that way.
Oh, yeah, and the number.
Oh, the number? Wait a second. Give me a second and I will get that to you. Actually, Willie, if you're still up there, can you go back a couple of slides from the end that's got the numbers and stuff?
Okay, while we're looking up the number, we have another question here.
There is not enough newspapers outside. Can you guys show us on the screen, go to the website and show us exactly where the sample ballot is? So when we get home, we can go and find it.
That's a good question. Oh, we got the phone number written down over here. All right, so for the people that want to know the phone number, get your pens ready. Ready? All right. It is 713-755-6965. Yep. 713-755-6965. Good, good. Okay. All right, looks like we are handing out some of the newspapers. Okay. Do we have any other questions? I can't read lips. All right, then, if we don't have any other questions, is Miss Minister Pam still in the building? She's going to rally the troops, give us a call to action. You have a question? Oh, one more question.
I have a valid Texas ID. However, it's damaged. Who is going to be making the determination on whether or not it's valid or not usable, or you need to fill out the form that they're talking about?
Okay, you have a damaged ID and you want to know who's going to determine if it's still valid or not.
Do I need to bring in both pieces of it? Is that going to be okay, or am I going to need to fill out the form that they're saying that you need in case your ID doesn't, what's on your ID, the address doesn't match what's on the ID, or when you filled out your voter registration, that form they're saying that you're going to need to fill out?
Okay, would anybody like to field that question about the damaged ID?
Okay, my suggestion would be, since early voting starts tomorrow, you can actually go into a voting precinct and make sure that that's valid, or if you want to go to DPS and make sure that that ID will be accepted. But it's easier to go into a voting location, because if they're telling you that it's not accepted, you will have plenty of time to get something different.
In general, we'll probably avoid a lot of headaches if we do the early voting and not have to worry about all the crazy lines that are going to be out there. I mean, all of us have been in Houston long enough to know traffic is bad, period. Can you imagine traffic on election day and then people standing in line? Come on, man. But with no further ado, I'll give the mic to Miss Minister Pam for the closing or the call to action.
Okay, I am here to present call of action. How many of you felt that you received some beneficial information today? Raise your hand. Very good. Okay, now I would like you to do, I charge you. How many of you know 5 people in your family or friends? How many of you? I'm sure everybody does, right? Okay, first of all, I would like you to get with your family and talk about voting. Ask them, are they going to vote? Even if necessary, taking them to vote, okay? And this is neighbors as well. Do you know that Harris County is the 3rd largest county in the United States? Now imagine if each one of us touched 5 people, and they touch 5 people, multiplication fact, that we could change this whole tide of our county. Who knows? And since we're a large county, we may do something to the state. So I challenge you that this is an important election year. There is a lot at stake. And so I ask you to do the best you can. How many of you feel that you're going to go out there, you're on fire, and you're going to tell people to vote? Yeah, come on, yeah, let's clap. Let's clap. Let's have some enthusiasm. Okay. So tell me, closing, at least touch 5 people and challenge them to tell 5 more people. Tell your family. I like when Deacon James says they do a Zoom meeting. I think that's out of the box, that you do a Zoom meeting with your family and talk to them about voting. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Pam. And I see that Miss Angela is still handing things out, but she was going to wrap this up for us before we move on to our closing prayer, and we'll call it a game.
Thank you, TS. So has everyone received these 2 forms? The one that says friend, family, and neighbors, and the other one that says plan, pledge, and pass it on. As Minister Pam said, the reason why this is so important is because we don't want to get to the other side of this election and then things don't go the way we want, and then we're saying, man, if I only had known, or I didn't vote because I really didn't like either candidate, or I like some of the things one said and some of the things the other said, but I'm not really in love with either one of them. Unfortunately, it's not about that. It's not a popularity contest. It's not about who makes you feel warm and fuzzy. It's not about who's the best speaker. It's about who is going to do most of the things that you want. Not one thing or two things. Who's going to do most of the things? Who actually cares about you and what you care about? That's why the election is important. And it's not just about who's at the presidential level. There's everybody on the ballot. So what happens is most people focus on that and they forget about the judges. They forget about school board stuff. They forget about bonds. They forget about the local stuff. Local elections actually affect you more than the presidential election. But a lot of people don't realize that. I asked this question before. Who knows who the railroad commissioner is, what they do? Railroad commissioner does not deal with railroads. They deal with natural resources, oil and gas. But they're hoping you don't know that. So you've got your sheriffs, you've got your county judges, you've got congressmen, you've got state legislators that are all on the ballot. So that's why it's important that you actually get your sample ballot ahead of time. There's going to be over 50 different races that you have to vote in. So if you already do your homework ahead of time, it doesn't take that long. Do it ahead of time, take your paper in with you, then it'll make it real easy for you to vote. But what we don't want to have happen is for folks to not vote, not participate, not get the word out, and then we get on the other side and then things go sideways and you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. So definitely exercise your right to vote. Voting is the great equalizer. We all have just one vote. It doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or you're a homeless person down the street. Everybody's vote is one vote and they all count the same. And remember, if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be making it so hard for you to vote. So I appreciate y'all coming out. If anybody still needs any of these forms, raise your hand so we can make sure to get them to you. Please sign in on the sign-in form so that way we can send you a copy of this presentation, keep you informed as to what's going on when we're going to have things when we get on the other side of the election that you all might want to be involved in or know about. Mm-hmm. This is for you to use as a resource for yourself. We don't need that information, but we want you to have it so that you know who you're reaching out to. And then you can follow up with those people and make sure they have a voting plan. Are they going to vote early or are they going to vote on election day? Do they know where the voting locations are? Do they know how to get a sample ballot? Those type things. So because if you don't have a plan, then you look up and it'll be November 2nd. You'll be like, oh, I missed all of early voting. So now I'm going to have to vote on election day. The great thing is they said there was like 700 different polling locations available on election day. So there's no excuse not to vote. So just like I said, make sure you have a plan and share that information with others. Any other questions, concerns? Okay, sure. No, we don't actually have a sample ballot outside because everyone lives in different areas. So your ballot may be different from mine. It depends on your address. But if you look in the voting guides that we've been passing out, there's a website you can go to. I believe it's vote411.org. And you can go ahead and put in there your address and it will pull up your ballot. And you can print it out if you want, or you can go through electronically and answer each of the questions. That's what I do. It's very helpful because not only does it tell you what every race is. So if, like I said, for instance, railroad commissioner, it'll have what the railroad commissioner does. It'll have what their term is. If they get paid, it'll have their salary. It'll have all the people that are running for that position. It'll have what their qualifications are. And then they ask them a couple of questions like, what's your top priority? So you can read through that and see, okay, well, this person is saying what I like. This person, I don't know what they're talking about, so I'm not going to vote for them. And then you check that box and you keep moving through the ballot. So once you get done, you can print it out, have it emailed to you or what have you, and then you can have that information to take with you into the polling location. You do have to print it out though. I believe it's vote411.org, but it's in your voting guide there. If not, you can go to harrisvotes.com, and that is it'll get you to that location as well. Any other questions, concerns? Again, I want to thank y'all for coming out. Hopefully this information has been helpful for you. I'm going to turn it back over to TS so that I believe we're wrapping up here.
Okay. Yes, just thank you all for coming out again, and voting is very, very important. As she said, the presidential one will affect you, but not as much as your local stuff. The local stuff is going to affect if you want to hire a mortgage or not, because your taxes and stuff go up, or maybe you don't have a house, you rent. Your rent could go up, or maybe you could have an effect on whether I-45 is getting construction or not. Things that affect you on your day-to-day can end up on certain ballots in your local elections, and that's why voting is so important, because it can affect you on your day-to-day life. Very, very important to note that. But it is time to close out, and we have Bishop O for that. Now, Bishop O, you ready? Let's give Bishop a round of applause. Man, it'd be bad if we didn't clap for him after clapping for everybody else.
Let me just say, let's give it up for PAAG. Haven't they done a great job here? And just want to emphasize how important it is to vote, so you'll know what the overall scheme of things are. We do need to pay attention to local, but there's a big scheme that affects everyone. The real radical right, what they want to do is reduce government, reduce the federal government, and they want to put most of the stuff back on states' rights. That's why they're proposing to get rid of the Department of Education, so that the state can decide what they want to do with education and not have the federal government have any protections. So I just want you to just listen to this. One of their conservative leading influencers have suggested that legislative issues should be left up to individual states to be decided, including whether or not slavery should be enacted. Just to let you know, don't think all the things that have been decided cannot be reversed if they do this move and everything goes back to states and states' rights. Here's another one of their people saying that she would not oppose requiring all Texans to not just carry driver's license and gun ID, but to carry passports to prove your citizenship. There's a lot that's going on and coming our way. So pray, as they've suggested, you vote, get 5 or as many people as you can to vote, because things can shift and shift very quickly. Let's pray. Father, we ask that you bless our thinking, give us wisdom and knowledge, give us a passion to be activists to get people to vote. We thank you for PAAG and for all that they've done to enlighten us, but let us not let this be idle. Let us do what it takes. And God, we ask that you protect our freedoms, all the freedoms that we have under the Constitution. Help us to do what we can to protect it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Okay, if anybody needs to see a demonstration of the voting machine, we can play that. It's about 2 minutes. So if you need to see that, please stay. And also would like to thank my team. I apologize for not doing that earlier.
To begin
Y'all
voting,
did.
select Touch Here to get started. You will be asked to enter your random 5-digit access code. This ensures you get the right ballot. If you weren't given an access code at check-in, your poll worker will start your voting session for you. Next, you'll insert your paper with the arrow side up and pointing toward the screen. For voters who are visually impaired, there are raised guardrails and braille instructions to help navigate. You will be notified when you've inserted your paper correctly. From there, you can select Next.